speed limit on our Main Street was 35 miles an hour, so everybody was going 45. So you really can't look at what's going on at businesses. You can't stop, you don't take your time, and you don't spend money driving that fast through a Main Street. So now that it's slowed down a bit, and it's still continuing to do so, it's becoming a much more viable business area, and businesses are opening. Before it was quite blighted, if anyone was familiar with 71 through Main Street. And so high-end businesses are opening, little restaurants, a new bar is opening. It's definitely coming, so I don't know if there's an easy answer, but it does happen that businesses improve, and there's case study after case study about that elsewhere.
If we had a business person on here, I think their refrain would be, we want parking. Because it almost always comes down to parking, right? Anybody else had that issue where they just, what do you mean people aren't going to be able to park? But just to add to that, we like to talk to businesses about increasing foot traffic. And when we say foot traffic, we mean walking and bicycling, and how much increasing foot traffic does bring an economic benefit. And that if you, sometimes there's a feeling that if they can't park, if a customer can't park right in front of their business, they're not going to go to it. But we point out several examples where people do park from farther away to get to where they want to go. Even a traditional Jersey mall, you're not parking right in front of a business. You're not parking right in front of a business in many of the other activities in our life. So expecting it for this day too. And by the way, let's first tell your employees not to park right in front of your business.
That's right.
Because once we do, we do a couple things. One, sometimes we count all the parking spaces and take a look at how often parking is used and utilized, and during peak and non-peak, to see how many empty spaces there are, and often there are plenty. It's just not where people are thinking. And another thing we do is we take a look at the land use and say, look how much of our land is dedicated just to personal vehicle parking. And when you kind of put that out on a map, sometimes that can help with, to do a little bit of a change of mind. One of the things we know also is Black Friday isn't what it used to be. And a lot of our parking standards are built for the one day of year where you might have a parking problem in major retail areas. It's not that anymore. We have an overabundance of free parking is more often than lack of parking. Yes?
I just want to add, we heard about studies just very briefly. Every time there's a successful project, that creates a study. So the advocates have to look up the studies and put them in front of the business owners and say, look, here, it was successful. It brought more prosperity. And this business opened where it had been closed for years. The more success we have, the more success we will have.
And I'd just like to also answer walkscore.com. If you look at Walkscore and the Walkscore of your communities that are walkable particularly, you'll notice that the property values are higher. So there is an economic value to having walkable communities.
So I just want to quote Brene Brown. Does anybody know who Brene Brown is? She's like, she's just awesome. But she says that stories are data with soul. And I think when we're talking about educating people, we can throw statistics at anybody. And for me, if you throw statistics at me, it's like Charlie Brown listening to his teacher. All I hear is wah, 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 wah. But if somebody tells me a story, I'm going to remember it. So I would love to hear some stories from all of you in your questions, like what experiences have you had in this realm?
Any other questions?
I'd like to hear suggestions from all of you to pick up on something Mike said, of how to shorten the 20-year average process. In West Windsor, we are still waiting for the last segment of a sidewalk that looked like it actually was happening kind of quickly, and now it seems to have stalled. But if you're looking for a story on that, People talking about their kids and having trouble navigating this road that had no shoulder and had an embankment, that I think is what caught council's attention more than anything, but Allison, you would know that even better. But the 20-year, how to shorten the 20-year horizon, that's my main question.
Sylvia, it was started just before I got on council, but we were all enthusiastic about it because of the personal stories about children, about handicapped people, just needing a sidewalk there. And I'm sorry that it has languished now, but I'm not on council anymore. And maybe that's a mistake that was made by the voters.
I would say to shorten the time span, it's persistence and regularly attending council meetings, planning board meetings to make sure that this doesn't slip off of the radar of all of those government bodies that are making these decisions.
Yeah, also I would say that you can't let this, just assume that the governing bodies are going to get it, that you can wait for them to do it. I do think that calls to action help a lot. Being on the ground level, gathering any kind of coalition that you can, finding one friend at the city level, and then community support for whatever it is. And this picture is awesome. You know, walking along the non-sidewalk road, you know, making yourselves visible but not obnoxious. You know, being out there saying this is what we need to do, and here we are the people that it's affecting. And you know, there are obviously no guarantees about any of it, but being out there on the street really makes a difference.
Tactical urbanism. You guys know what tactical urbanism is? It's kind of like DIY, and don't repeat that we said this. We never gave you this advice. But yeah, sometimes you just have to do stuff and try it and see how it works. And a demonstration project sometimes can say so much more than all the statistics in the world. So if we can take a weekend and try to do the thing that we've been talking about, and let the people experience it, then you can build a little more public will around it.
So one story about that. Girl Scouts in Montclair, they got together and got approval for where there were going to be four-way stops to do a street mural. They painted it. My kids, her kid, a bunch of others.
Solicit your children.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I have no problem paying for that one. But they threw down some paint. I mentioned this earlier. Paint is your friend. Paint is cheap. It's replaceable. If you try something and you hate it, it wasn't bricks and mortar. It wasn't construction. Try something with paint and see how it goes. Jersey City's been kicking it with demo projects. Some of them, the aesthetic, you can argue about whether it's wonderful, but it gets noticed. And hey, what did they invest? They invested a little bit of paint. Big deal. They can follow it up with constructed curb extensions. Hey, that's wonderful. But that's a way to kickstart projects.
So paint and cones. Cones help too.
Oh, good. Cones, chalk. Like, cones are the simplest thing. Cones you do, and here's my tip. Fire chief, DPW, emergency services. Those are the folks who could throw bricks at your project later, so include them. Have the fire chief walk behind the biggest fire apparatus when you're putting cones out and see what they can actually swing on a turn. And with the cones, you plan where you're going to put the paint. And then you put the paint. And then the paint didn't make the sky fall, so maybe that's where you can actually plan. Get your grant, get your plan, get your grant, get your construction plans that meet engineering standards, and then build it. Done.
And how many engineers are, by the way, in the room? I heard one. Anybody else?
Nice.
Okay, so engineers, we need your help in advocacy. Okay, I just have to say this, that the engineering standards really do have to either change or be able to be applied more flexibly than they have often been applied in the past. And we're going to have to depend on engineers because, how should I say this nicely? engineers don't always listen to advocates, because advocates are crazy, right? Because we want it now, right? So we really do need, especially younger engineers, to sort of tell the older engineers, you know, look, there's more to life than just the pavement. You gotta look at the curve, you gotta look at the house, and whatever else the land use is around it, and to sort of get your mind up out of the pavement, out of the gutter, and into the real world, and then sort of look at all the different pieces to be able to apply your standards properly. Because a lot of times those standards aren't really standards or guidelines, and they can be applied flexibly.
So Jerry, is that gonna give us capital budgets? Is it gonna give us votes? Is it gonna give us a trails plan?
Okay. Any other questions? Was that a question here? No. Bingo.
Oh, bingo.
A lot easier.
I like to check it out.
We got a lot of bingos now.
I have one more story.
Come down and get your bands if you're bingo.
What the West Windsor